On this week's episode of A Drier Dose of Disney, Jared discusses SeaWorld San Diego and whether it's worth the visit.
Welcome to this week's episode of A Drier Dose of Disney. I'm your host, Jared Dreyer, and today we are on part 2 of a 3-part series where we are talking about the lesser attended parks, and we are going to be visiting SeaWorld in San Diego today. As you can see, I'm still in the Drier Dose of Disney condo here in Orlando. We've been trying to find different spots to film, so those of you watching us on YouTube can see a different part of our condo each and every week as we take you around the condo. And today I'm in the dining room, and we've got obviously some really cool Disney ride posters behind us here. And I love the way we've decorated it with lots of really cool Disney art throughout the entire condo. So you're definitely going to want to check it out or stay here if you don't have a place to stay in Orlando. You can find the link down in the description below to our condo where you can then reserve a spot when you're out here and check out our calendar to see what's available. And it's cheaper than any other hotels in the area, and it's 3-bedroom, 2-bath. So you're absolutely going to love it. We love it. This is our home away from home, and we're not too far from the parks. We're just a few minutes from each one. Definitely want to encourage you guys to check that out down in the links below. And while you're at it, click that pause button and find the subscribe button so that way you can subscribe to this content and get this content delivered into your inbox each and every week and get the latest Disney and Universal tips and tricks downloaded into your inbox every single week as we release episodes, because we're now over episode 60 and we've got tons more coming, and we love doing this for you guys. Please click that subscribe button. And then if you find any tips or tricks that save you time or money, find us over at Patreon. That's also in the links below. And you can throw us a couple dollars to keep this podcast going or become a regular subscriber where you're going to get lots of cool extras out there. But we definitely want to thank our subscribers that are out there. You guys are why we do the podcast, and we appreciate the support. So thank you very much. So today you can see I'm wearing another RSV LTS shirt. This one is the new Finding Nemo one. I got this for Father's Day this year and thought, hey, this one's fitting to wear for a day talking about SeaWorld. Now, last week I wore a different shirt that had sharks on it from our SeaWorld Orlando episode. Today we're talking about SeaWorld San Diego, and you can see we've got Nemo, Clownfish, and Dory, which is a Pacific blue tang on the shirt here. And we're going to be telling you all about SeaWorld and the coolest things there as well. Now, I will start out the episode by telling you SeaWorld San Diego is very near and dear to my heart because it's just down the street from my alma mater, which is Point Loma Nazarene University. I went to school in the late 90s at Point Loma, and I majored in biology, and my whole goal was to study marine zoology and specifically sharks. I absolutely love sharks, and that was my whole goal, was to work on a shark research vessel and to document all kinds of new shark behaviors, similar to what you guys now see on Shark Week, which wasn't a thing when I was going to college. So it was really cool after college when that became more of a mainstream media type thing with Shark Week on Discovery Channel. That was before my time, and I loved sharks even back then. I did a lot of time over at SeaWorld. I had a season pass back then. I studied a lot at the Birch Aquarium up there in La Jolla, and I absolutely loved the Southern California, San Diego area. So SeaWorld is very cool. Now, a couple quick things to think about. A lot of people think when they go to Southern California parks, obviously Disney's their number one choice. They've got a couple parks there. They start thinking about maybe Universal, Knott's Berry Farm. They think about Magic Mountain up in Valencia or SeaWorld down in San Diego. SeaWorld in San Diego is about 90 miles away, so it's a little bit more than an hour and a half away from Southern California Disneyland. Now, if you fly into San Diego, is a slower paced town than LA. It's great. There's great beaches. Coronado's awesome. La Jolla's awesome. I will tell you that San Diego is in and of itself worth its own vacation. You don't want to cram in a San Diego trip into your Southern California vacation where you're going to Disney. Now, if you want to do just parks and you're saying, okay, I'm going to do Disney and I want to do SeaWorld, then by all means, yeah, drive down and do it. But San Diego's so awesome, it totally deserves its own week of vacation while you're down there. So definitely you're going to want to go check it out. But you have to realize that when I was going to SeaWorld in San Diego, there were only a couple SeaWorld parks. It was a big deal. Shamu was a big deal. Obviously, the Free Willy movie had just come out a couple years prior, and everybody loved going to the parks to go see the Shamu show and to watch the trainer swim with the killer whales. And that stadium was packed. Every time you'd go, every single show was completely full and every seat was taken, and it was awesome. The shows were amazing. They were 30 to 40 minutes long. They did a lot of really cool tricks. And it was just an amazing event to see these killer whales in captivity. Keep in mind though, SeaWorld back then was a aquatic aquarium based park, right? So it was not a thrill park. There were no rides at SeaWorld. In fact, the only ride back then was the tower that you can go up and down, and they didn't have any other rides or roller coasters that you could go to. Which then fast forward, the company that also owns Busch Gardens out here in Tampa purchased all the SeaWorld properties, and from there they started turning them all into thrill parks. So it was in the early 2000s they started adding some of these more thrill-based rides, starting with Journey to Atlantis. And Journey to Atlantis is a really cool ride where it's more of a boat ride where you're going to get wet. They've got a lift. It does have a little bit of a roller coaster track on it at one point, but it's not a crazy type thrill ride like you're going to find at your Six Flags type parks or over at Busch Gardens. So it was an okay addition to the park. It didn't take up much space. In fact, it was on the front over by the parking lot. So Journey to Atlantis, that was cool. Then fast forward a few years after that. Then they added Manta. And they did this because they were doing the Manta coaster out in Orlando as well. And so they did Manta out in San Diego. But the difference is the Manta in San Diego is totally different. It is not so much of a thrill ride as it is just a really basic roller coaster. And by basic, this one's kind of on par with Disney roller coasters. It's not much more aggressive than, say, Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, Space Mountain, Expedition Everest. And in fact, I will even say Expedition Everest is more aggressive than Manta at SeaWorld in San Diego. This one is very low to the ground. It just sweeps around. Granted, it does have some more intense turns. It's got a couple little, I don't want to say even loops. It's just got some really tight turns in there that you're going to feel some G's on. But it's a typical sit-down roller coaster that doesn't go up very high. It is a little bit quicker. It does have a good launch on it, which is a lot of fun. But it's supposed to mimic how a manta swims through the water, which makes total sense. So that was a really cool addition. So now you've got a couple rides that were coming in to SeaWorld. But go back into, now you're in the early 2000s here at SeaWorld San Diego. They had a couple cool rides, but they still had the dolphin show. They still had the Shamu show. They still had the sea lion and otter show. And then they had the huge array of aquariums throughout the park. So there were aquariums everywhere. And they had some really cool things, like they had an octopus in one. They had aquariums of tropical fish. They had places where you could go feed the stingrays. They had places where you could go see the dolphins and potentially have an interaction with a dolphin. They had really cool animal exhibits there. And they also had their new Arctic experience, which had the beluga whales in it, and they had polar bears. And that was awesome. And I went there a couple times where they would bring out a snow fox, and they would have a snow fox on a leash out in the open where people could walk by and see it. And that was really cool. So they had a really good animal experience there. At the same time, they also had the Budweiser Clydesdales. So they had a huge barn with these huge horses in there. And that was really cool. So a very different experience than the aquatic life. But you were able to walk through this barn, and you were able to see Anheuser-Busch and how they took care of their Clydesdales that they used in their Budweiser commercials. And they had the huge stagecoaches in there and stuff. And that was awesome. So SeaWorld reached its pinnacle at that point. It was doing really well. And then what happened was a movie called Blackfish came out. And if you've not seen Blackfish, it's a documentary about killer whales in captivity and how they get killed and how they get trapped. And it's a terrible movie in the sense of it makes you feel awful for these animals. And it really started hurting their dollar over at SeaWorld. So because of that, they had to change up all their shows, and which they did. And they did a good job of making them more educational instead of more entertainment. And they took the trainers out of the water and left the animals alone in the water, and they still will do their tricks. But they totally changed their style over there. And what they decided to do at that point was they decided to take SeaWorld and take it from a more of an aquarium zoo-like park and turn it into a thrill park. So then they started adding roller coaster after roller coaster and shutting down all the exhibits and shutting down all the aquariums. So we actually went in 2021, was our last trip down to San Diego, and we did the three big San Diego parks, which are the Safari Park, the San Diego Zoo, and SeaWorld. And at SeaWorld, I will be honest with you, I couldn't have been more disappointed in my experience at SeaWorld San Diego. They had added all the new roller coasters. The park just was dirty. None of the aquariums were clean, meaning there were algae all over all the glass in the aquariums. The animals were not taken very well care of. And it just was a dirty, nasty park like a Six Flags would be. with trash everywhere. And it just left a really bad taste in my mouth, to the point my wife and I both said, we won't come back. We won't come back to SeaWorld San Diego. It was terrible. It was awful. And it, in essence, even made us feel like we didn't want to go to SeaWorld Orlando to check it out, which, if you watched my episode last week, we talked about, we went there a couple weeks ago, and I absolutely loved it. It is back on par with what we expected to see in San Diego, where they had the shows, they had the roller coasters, but they had some great aquariums. They had some great animal exhibits there, in addition to the thrill ride. So Orlando is very different than San Diego. And at this point, San Diego has lost its identity, where it used to be a very clean park with tons of plants and foliage everywhere and really cool animals. And they've ripped it all out and they've made it a steel construction place with tons of roller coasters, and it's no longer fun. So I will tell you, that is a big difference from where it was in the late 90s, early 2000s to where it is today. We talked about Manta. We talked about Journey to Atlantis. They have added some other roller coasters. So if you're a roller coaster enthusiast, it's probably going to be a good park for you. You'll probably enjoy it. I do love roller coasters, but I do believe SeaWorld should be really dedicated to those animals. So they have the Emperor, which is their best coaster. It's their most aggressive coaster. It only has 3 rows of 6 people, so they can't get a ton of people on it, but it's very high. It hangs you over the edge before it does the vertical drop, which is cool. They have a new roller coaster that opened up this year called Arctic Rescue that's more on the ground like Manta. They've got Electric Eel, which is more similar to Icebreaker out in Orlando, where it's a coaster that goes back and forth, and it goes over the top where it just twirls and comes back down. So that one's not very exciting. And then Tidal Twister, which I don't even think you can call a roller coaster. This thing's just on a set track that just spins. So it's more like a spinning ride than it is a roller coaster, but they count it as a roller coaster. So Tidal Twister. So in total now they've got 6 roller coasters there. When back in the day they started with 1, went to 2, and then it just changed completely, and they've added 4 in the last 2 years. In addition to that, they do have Sesame Street land there, similar to Orlando. They did put this in the dead center of the park. So it's, when you go in, it's right off to the right. It's in the front center. So it is an area that's going to be tough to avoid if you're going to be walking around the park. For me, and I said this on the last episode, obviously I'm in my mid-40s. Sesame Street is not my kind of entertainment, but I can say, had I been a little kid, anywhere from 2 to 7 or whatever, I probably would have loved it. So if you have little kids, the Sesame Street land's going to be a good place to go. We'll talk next week about Legoland, and Legoland's even better. So I will say I would do Legoland before I did SeaWorld going forward if you have very little kids. So don't let Sesame Street pull you there. But they do have the same 3 shows. They have the dolphin show, the sea lion and otter show, and then the killer whale show now. All 3 of these shows are much shorter now. They're about 15 to 20 minutes long. They are very educational, with the exception of the sea lion and otter show, which is more of a comedy show. And they've had Clyde and Seymour there forever. And those sea lions do the same act every single day, multiple times a day. And that one's a lot of fun because they tied it to pop culture and to a lot of recent TV and movie and stuff like that. So that one is probably the best show that is there. Of course, if you don't get to see killer whales regularly, because you can't, unless you're up in, Alaska or out in the Pacific somewhere, you would love to go see the killer whales there. So those are a lot of fun. But do know that they have definitely scaled it down since the Blackfish movie. I will tell you, at the end of the day, my I can do this all day tip of the day for SeaWorld, and I hate to say this, is don't go. It's not worth the money. When we were there last time, like I said, the park was absolutely filthy. They have closed so many of their animal exhibits to put up roller coasters that they really only have the 3 shows left, plus the Arctic experience over there. They do have the shark exhibit still that you can walk through, and that one's really cool. But outside of that, they've closed down all their aquariums. They've taken everything out of the park that was fun and exciting. And I can tell you, anything that was an aquarium type structure. So in Manta, they have an aquarium. When you walk through there, the glass was completely covered in algae. You couldn't even see through the glass because it was so dirty. So you couldn't even see the animals that were in there. It just looked disgusting. It looked like they haven't done maintenance on this park in 20 years. And I know aquariums can go bad really quick, so I want to give them a little more grace, but it was bad. It was terrible, to the point we felt bad for the animals, and we said we would never go back. So I will say, save your money. If you have little kids, go to Legoland, go to Disney. You're going to have a better experience. If you want roller coasters, go up to Magic Mountain up in Valencia. You're going to get way better coasters up there, and the whole park is dedicated to coasters. So you're going to have a lot more fun up there than you would down in San Diego. If you're in San Diego or you want to do animal stuff, I will tell you the San Diego Zoo and the Safari Park are 10 times better than SeaWorld. So go visit one of those. The San Diego Zoo is world renowned if you did not know that. It is a bit of a hike just because it's on the side of a hill in Balboa Park. And so you are going to get a lot of steps in that day. But they have some amazing exhibits over there, including their koala one it's out of this world. And then they have other exhibits throughout the whole park that are just amazing. But the koala one is definitely worth calling out because it was awesome. And then the safari park obviously is more of that open space, get the animals really out there, and then you can do the safari trek, similar to what you do at Animal Kingdom out in Orlando. That's an awesome park. Those two are doing really well. They are separate from everything else. They are owned together, and they are definitely high quality. So if you like animals, those are the two parks that I'm going to tell you to go check out. With that, we hope you have a magical week. As you're planning your next vacation, tune in next week as we talk about Legoland. I have been to Legoland, surprisingly, and I'm going to tell you all about it, and I'm going to tell you some of the best things about it. So we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.